Well, thank you all for being here tonight. I know you all have busy schedules, but I'm really happy that you all have made it. I'm Sherilyn Peterson. I'll go ahead and introduce myself first, and then I'll let my two staff members as well introduce themselves. I'm the Healthy Wildlife and Water Program Manager. I'm the one that reached out to all of you to get you signed up. I am based out of Rochester, Washington, just south of Olympia. And I'm going to go ahead and let Laura and Adalisa introduce themselves really quick.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you. I'm Laura. I'm the communications manager with NCAP, and I live in Eugene, Oregon. NCAP, we have our headquarters here in Eugene. So I am not in Washington, but I'm here mostly helping out with tech and any support that you might need today.
Hello, this is Ana Elisa Wilson. I am a specialist of the program Healthy and Equity and Healthy Communities and Environmental. Working with the Latino population. I am here in Richland, Washington, in the eastern area of Washington. And thank you so much for being and participating in this wonderful workshop with NCAP. Thank you.
Great. So the training tonight, just to give you a little bit of a knowledge on what's going on, it's going to be 90 minutes long. We're going to provide you with some pesticide education that you can utilize in the next month in talking to people in your communities about the harms of yard care products. So this is just a little roadmap of what our training is going to look like this evening. We started off with an intro to NCAP, or we will, and then I'll let you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves and why you're here. Then we'll go into some of the chemical pesticide impacts on water, aquatic life, and human health. And then looking at some of the pesticide alternatives that are available to you and to others, and just some canvassing tips and tips and tricks to get through some of the outreach. And then after that, we'll have a nice little demo with Laura and myself to kind of show you guys the ropes and how you want to go ahead and engage with folks. And then we'll let you guys kind of get together in a breakout room and kind of practice the script that I sent a script out to you guys through email. Hopefully you have that handy. If not, we can provide that to you. You guys will go ahead and get together in the breakout rooms and practice. We'll do the breakout rooms like I mentioned, and then we'll do a final wrap up. If you guys have any questions or any needs that we need to support you with, we can go ahead and then talk about what the next steps are to do the outreach. Next slide. So first, I want to give you a little bit of an introduction to our organization. NCAP, or the Northwest Center for Alternatives to Pesticides, has been around for 45 years now. It's a nonprofit based out of Eugene, Oregon, which was founded in 1977 from a wellspring of community groups that were basically trying to combat the aerial forest spraying that was happening in Oregon and Washington at that time. And it's kind of morphed, next slide, into what we are today. So 45 years later, our program areas of healthy people and communities, healthy wildlife and water, and healthy food and farms have shifted a bit in our focus, but our mission's still the same. And that's to protect community and environmental health and inspire the use of ecologically sound solutions to reduce the use of pesticides. Next slide. So I'm curious, what brought you all here today?
Hi, this is Vipul from Bellevue, Washington. So I thought it's important for us to think about what do we want the legacy to be, polluted environment or a safe living space. I think that's what motivated me personally.
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
My name is Carolina, and I'm here in East Renton, so close to Issaquah, Washington. I'm originally from Poland. I've lived here for 20 or 30 years, a long time. But I'm interested in learning more. I've always been, really concerned with what's going on out there, especially with our waters being polluted. And this is extremely important because well, water's life. And so my partner is Native American, and we went to Standing Rock to support the water protectors. And I just wanted to do something here where I live in my community, and also have more information to share with like family and friends about what's going on here, and also the kind of decisions that they're making regarding the gardens or like their yards and the use of pesticides.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
I'm Chris, and I'm in Kirkland, and water's my favorite thing, always. I love swimming, and during the pandemic, I started doing paddleboarding, and we have a fold-up kayak, and so I've been out on the water and taking advantage of the free time that we had to explore, and I'm just worried about all of the runoff that comes into the lakes and the rivers. You can't really, it's funny because I go through Redmond and it's just below everything that's going on. And it's almost like this secret world. And I think that people forget that it's there because it's just below us. And I just would like to do my part and help to share with others how important it is to protect those. And even if all of us would do some small things to help protect it, it would add up. So I wanted to learn a little bit more about how to go about it.
That's awesome, Chris. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
I think, the consensus is that people care about clean water, and especially here as well. We're all here because we care about clean water, and access to clean water is what connects people to a strong sense of human and environmental health and well-being. Next slide. This was a 2022 yard care survey that we put out a few months back. These were some of the responses that really stood out in that survey, and really got me thinking about, how do people, what do people see, think, or, care about when it comes to water? And 51.4% of our respondents were most concerned about the health of the local rivers, lakes, streams, fish, and other wildlife. And this is when they were considering the impact of pesticides being used on their yard, which is really great. And about 75.7% of these folks were also concerned about the health of their household members and or their pets. So that's a substantial amount of people that were concerned about these things. So that makes me think that there are people out there just like you that are willing to go out and be champions for Puget Sound. Next slide. So nearly 80 million pounds of pesticides are used on the US yards annually, which is an outstanding number. So when I talk about pesticides, and I use that term, I'm referring to both herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, and fertilizers. These are all considered pesticides. And I think that that's something that people don't usually realize. They only think about either herbicides or insecticides, but not the other two. And these are often used in yard maintenance, and they're often detected in groundwater. So pesticides and fertilizers can leach or seep through soil into drinking water sources like private and public wells and other water supplies. And this is a huge problem. Unfortunately, there's no program to monitor our drinking water for this type of contamination. Many of the widely used lawn care chemicals that we have found detected in groundwater. For example, we found 2,4-D7, which is a really popular product that you see at Lowe's and Home Depot. Diazinon, which is another big one, and then Roundup, I think, which everybody knows about. So nitrates from fertilizers can find their way into human drinking water by seeping into the groundwater, or they can run off into reservoirs, which is really problematic, and it can have really significant negative health effects. So in thinking about fertilizers and weed and feeds, like people like to refer to them as in the picture there, nitrogen's a foundational nutrient that plants need most, and it's really the most abundant element in the Earth's atmosphere. Yet nitrogen in the soil, which is known as a nitrate, has become scarce because of industrial ag practices generally. So it's important, replenishing the nitrate was a constant challenge for farmers over the time until we were able to come up with synthetic fertilizers, at the turn of the 20th century. So this, we found, provided nutrients to the plants almost immediately, which we thought, wow, that's awesome. These nitrate-rich fertilizers began to start leaching into groundwater, and then we noticed that there was a resultant nutrient pollution that was causing really massive algae growth in the water. And so nitrate finds its way into human drinking water pretty easily. It can leach into groundwater through soil, or it can run off into reservoirs and, basically, like I was saying, really hurt your health and the health of the ecosystem as well. Next slide.
Shay, I put a question in the chat when you said 2,4-D. I know I've heard it before. Is that the same or basically weed and feed, or is that something different?
Yeah, 2,4-D is, I don't know that they specifically call it weed and feed, but that is the active ingredient, yes, in a lot of those different fertilizers that you see. So how do chemical pesticides harm aquatic life? Well, we were just talking about nitrogen. So excessive nitrogen can cause algae growth, which I was saying just a minute ago. This algae decomposition is life-threatening for aquatic fish species and their food sources. Basically, once the algae dies, its decomposition will consume the oxygen in the water, and this will therefore suffocate and kill any aquatic life. It doesn't matter what it is. And looking specifically at some of the organophosphates, you guys might have heard about this. An organophosphate is a class of pesticides that are most often in the US for weed control. So thinking about an example would be glyphosate, which is an active ingredient in the weed killer Roundup. Non-target wildlife, or wildlife that you don't mean to actually target, are most frequently exposed by these compounds. And basically what these compounds do is they inhibit an enzyme that's found at the junction between the animal's nerve cells and within their nervous system, and it alters their behavioral responses. So everything from, being able to thermoregulate their body temperature, which would lead to hypothermia, which, they can freeze and die. Fish are, specifically really, they need a really specific temperature to live. So, once you add that stuff in, it changes that, and it changes their body temperature. And it can also reduce alter their hormone levels and their litter size, or their amount of young that they can produce. And then the research that I found on organophosphates was shown to affect the ability of fish and aquatic invertebrates to avoid predation. So they can't even protect themselves. They're so confused that they don't know what to do. So not only do chemical pesticides harm aquatic fish, but they harm their food source. So this picture here on the right is a picture of a mayfly. A mayfly is a really important indicator species for water quality. Anytime you see a mayfly, you know that the water quality is good. And the thing with mayflies, actually, they're incredibly important, not only for that reason, but they're also a really important food source for fish. They have a really important protein-rich makeup that is really good for fish, and that's why they eat them. Neonicotinoids, I kind of want to talk about that. That's something that has been really a hot topic as of late. And that is a family of chemicals commonly found in flea and tick collars, some landscaping chemicals, like house chemicals for yards. So looking at that, while the impacts of, we think about neonicotinoids when we think about pollinators. That's generally when we talk about that class of pesticides, that's what we think of. But it's been widely discussed that other organisms in aquatic environments can also be at risk from these specific pesticides. So aquatic insects and crustaceans are really highly sensitive to this class of pesticide. And the mayfly is identified as the most sensitive. So there can be cascading effects on the food webs and the healthy ecosystem function. At a low level, basically, it can change species abundance of insects. It can alter predator-prey relationships, reduce water filtration, and also nutrient cycling, which is really important. These are really important things that we need in order to keep our water clean and make sure that the ecosystem is running as it should. So on to the harms of human health from pesticides. Basically, direct exposure from spraying, as you see in the picture on the right, or even consuming contaminated drinking water are ways that pesticides can get into the human body. And they basically can happen, like I say, a number of different ways, from spray drift, from people applying them, or if your water, say your well or whatever water body you're getting your drinking water is contaminated by residues. So I have a little bit of data from one of our partners at Beyond Pesticides, which is another nonprofit that we partner with pretty often. And they said of 40 most commonly used lawn pesticides, 26 of these are linked with cancer or carcinogens. 12 are linked with birth defects, 21 with reproductive effects, 32 with liver or kidney damage, 24 with neurotoxicity, and 24 with the disruption of the endocrine system or the hormone system, which is really very, very scary to think about. Because these are things that we use, or some of us have used in the past, and just not thinking about what the actual impacts could be, not only to ourselves, but to our families, our pets, to the water, to the soil. Soil is another big issue. So pesticides can harm human health in a couple different ways. It can cause acute and chronic health effects. So I listed some of these effects on the screen here. Acute effects are usually effects that are less serious. So you might get like stinging eyes or a rash or a blister. It could lead to blindness, which would be a little more severe. But usually, if you're affected by any kind of drift or anything like that, an application, you would feel like nausea or dizziness. You could possibly die. Like that's not usually an acute effect, but it could be. And then there's more serious ones, like I was saying, cancer, birth defects, reproductive effects, kidney damage, and all those other ones that I mentioned. So yeah, it can be pretty scary. So, when you see these signs, or when people see them, like generally it's a good idea to stay away. Like they say, keep off for a reason. So yeah, I definitely to make sure that you're paying attention to that. Next slide.
Hey, just to clarify, those other more serious, the chronic effects would be like if you were exposed over a longer period of time, like if through your work or applying pesticides on your lawn over a longer amount, you were exposed multiple times, right?
Yeah, so like when I think of a chronic effect, I would think of somebody that's like a landscaper or maybe like a farm worker, somebody that's like constantly, or just a pesticide applicator in general, somebody that's around pesticides, like you say, day in and day out for long periods of time. The acute effects, sometimes you don't even see all of those. I know, I've been actually affected by pesticides at one point in my life. And, I went through the stinging eye thing and I felt kind of sick. So I've had a few of the acute effects before. So I know what that's like, but yeah, basically that's the difference, Laura. Thanks for asking. So I guess taking this and looking at the bigger picture of what pesticides, the climate crisis, and water, like kind of that interplay between the three, we like to say, instead of that we're experiencing climate change, that we're in a climate crisis currently. And with that, we're starting to see pesticide toxicity increasing when subjected to warming waters. So once you have the climate warming, so is the water. So then when you get the interplay between that and the pesticide, it starts to make it a lot more toxic than it normally would be. So this could be obviously really bad for aquatic life, bad for drinking water purposes, or any kind of water that you're using, period. So just thinking about, if we were to reduce the amount of pesticides that we're putting into the water, like that would actually, it would be better. But with the climate the way that it is, and people still using, because, we said that it was, there's a really astounding number of people that are still using pesticides. So, that's just something to think about. I wanted to throw that in there. So there are many pesticide alternatives out there. I could go through a list of many. I won't bore you guys with that, although some of them might be of use. So if you'd like to take notes about which ones I mentioned. So basically when I say a least toxic pesticide, it's still a pesticide. It's just not the synthetic, toxic pesticide that you would normally think about. So basically, this could be anything from like this bottle of 30% concentrated vinegar. Anything that's like 20 to 30% horticultural vinegar can help you deal with many of your weed problems. So broadleaf weeds and grasses, this could be used as an alternative to Roundup or other toxic herbicides that people might be using. You want to always look for that OMRI, or the Organic Materials Review Institute label. This says to people that, this product is safer. It's still toxic to some level, but, it is not going to give you cancer. It's using more natural products, such as D-limonene, which is from a citrus oils, basically. And then other essential plant oil or based oils like clove oil. There's sodium lauryl sulfate, which is the surfactant that kind of holds it all together. And that lowers the surface tension between ingredients. And that's something that you find in like home shampoo, toothpaste, lotions, stuff like that. But I do have a few examples. There are some pre-emergent annual weed sprays that you could use. There's one particular that when people contact me through our consultation service, they ask me, what could I use instead of Roundup? And I found a few different things. There's a product called Avenger.
Sorry,
Yes.
Can you explain what pre-emergent is?
Yeah, pre-emergent is basically something that you put on before the plants come up. So basically you could have an emergent or a pre-emergent. Usually some of your herbicides are pre-emergent. So you will use those either the season before or like right before the growing season starts.
So it's like a preventative.
Yep.
Control. Okay, thanks.
Yep. So yeah, like I said, there's a lot of products out there. A lot of people like to say this is safe, or they like to use that term. But I think the one thing that you can look for is that organic seal, the OMRI seal. That would actually tell you that it's a least toxic listed product. And they have everything from, horticultural oils, insecticidal soaps, neem oil is another one. I know that could be kind of a hot topic in some circles because for the reason that I'm about to say. So least toxic pesticides, like I say, are still pesticides. So you need to use them not super liberally, just thinking that, this is safe, so I can use it as I want to. You should definitely try not to broadcast spray them, try to use them in a targeted manner because it will kill everything around it. It doesn't discriminate. So if it's a broadleaf herbicide, it's going to kill anything with broadleaves or grass. So just be very mindful of that. And when you're talking to people, if they're not using least toxic pesticides, maybe that's something that you can try to support them with by giving them some examples of things that they can use. So there are a few other things that you could do as an alternative to using pesticides that you can talk to folks about. There's always the manual weed removal, which is really good, but it takes a long time. It can be very time consuming, especially if you have a big area that you're trying to weed. Maybe not so good for everyone. So that's something that you can always suggest, though. A lot of plants really respond well as long as you get the root out of the ground. You should be pretty good. And then biocontrols, I'm usually pretty careful about suggesting these, but I think there are definitely some that are really useful that you could talk to people about. So there's one in particular, it's called BT, and it's a bacteria that they put on plants to, let me explain how this works. It's found naturally in soil throughout the world. And basically what it does is it creates a spore that will grow into a new bacteria so that it has proteins within the bacteria that are toxic to insects. So when the insects try to eat that, then they die. So it's kind of like, it's an interesting way that nature could work for you without you having to physically use chemical synthetic pesticides. And it's relatively cheap, actually, for the most part. I think that pesticides can get expensive, even the least toxic ones as well. But I think in the end, it's really good. Annalisa, you had your hand raised?
Yes, well, as you know, I'm learning everything about, the pesticides and alternatives. I like too much the word alternatives. And it's so interesting for me because I never hear about the bacteria they can eat, the plague or something like that. It's very interesting, that team. I don't know if, where you can buy those kind of insect or bacteria. So how can I do that? I don't know. I didn't know too much about it, but it's very interesting topic. I don't know, Shay.
Yeah, actually, you can buy the BT bacteria. You can just Google search that online, and there's actually a lot of places that you can purchase that from. And basically, it'll come in a little vial. It's similar to people do this too for like root weevils, which are a really big problem in Washington. They're the ones that eat your rhododendrons, and they leave the little munchy marks on the leaves. Those guys actually like to live in the soil. So the bacteria actually helps with bugs like that, that, they'll overwinter during the winter. So yeah,
okay, and like for the diatomaceous earth, is that the pre-emergent? Like, is that something that you put on? Like, how could I use diatomaceous earth?
So diatomaceous earth wouldn't be a pre-emergent. So basically what you could use that at any time. And basically what that's usually used for is insects.
Okay.
So, and the way that works is you would take it and you would spread it around. You got to be kind of careful because it can get into your lungs and cause a little bit of irritation. It's very powdery. So just make sure that you're, being careful when you're putting it on. And what it does is it dehydrates the bugs from the inside. It like basically, it eats away at their exoskeleton as well. So it's interesting how it works. But yeah, probably not a great way to die that way. I'm sure it would be really horrible. Okay, the final piece was looking at just how can you basically not spray at all. How could you amend your soil in a way that is healthy for your plants to grow, as well as to keep pests away and weeds? And there are ways to do that. You can obviously find compost, straw, finely shredded bark, anything that's organic material. And basically that'll help modify your soil structure. And help, as it's decomposing, it allows it to absorb and retain water and nutrients. So it's really healthy for your plants. Basically, so that way you don't have to use synthetic fertilizers or the people that you're talking to. This is a way that you can tell them, like, if you are using a chemical fertilizer, like there are ways around that, right? So basically the big problem, like I was saying with synthetic fertilizers, is the oxygen depletion part. So it's a really big problem for watersheds because it creates this algae bloom that, like we were talking about earlier, that the fish and the insects, like it kills them, right? Because they can't consume the oxygen in the way that they normally would. So now, next slide.
Hey Shay, I think my final question for this part. Because you mentioned some different things like Roundup and weed and feed. If when someone's talking with a neighbor or someone and asking what they use on their lawn or yard, what are other things they might hear? So if someone says Roundup, we know that's a pesticide that we don't want people to use. Weed and Feed has synthetic fertilizer and weed killer in it. Are there other common ones that people should be on the lookout for to know that someone's using chemical pesticides or synthetic fertilizers?
I mean, there's a lot out there. It's a pretty exhaustive list of names that I honestly, even though I work at this organization, that I can't pronounce. So there's a pretty exhaustive list, and I didn't include all of them. But it's always important, I think, when even when you're talking to people about this, that they're looking at labels. Labeling is really huge, and knowing what what is in it, what are you putting on your property, and then how is that going to react with the ecosystem. So yeah, like the bigger ones, I think for lawn care, if they're not using Roundup or Weed and Feed, they could be using the neonicotinoids, which would be like imidacloprid, anything that you would see in like the dog collars that people put on their pets or cats for pest control. So yeah, there are some main ones, but yeah, there's a pretty exhaustive list, and I didn't include them all. So all right, so we can move on to our door canvassing tips. Yeah, so we were talking about, it's going to be a month-long outreach. Basically, what the ask is from us is that in that time, you talk with 10 people within your community. And the goal is to get either 5 pesticide-free pledges or 5 email signups. I don't want to make it too hard on you guys because you're volunteering for this. And don't stress out if you don't get, the 5, like we can make that work. Door canvassing is really difficult. I realize this. And, I'm going to try to give you some tips that will help you out along the way. I've done a little bit of door canvassing myself. I've had a lot of success on the phone with people, but that's a different story. So I think that now, with people, kind of coming out of COVID, sort of, I think that people will be excited generally to talk to people, but, you might still have some people that may not want to engage, and that's fine too. So basically, we're going to, like I said, we're going to try to prepare you as much as we can. Next slide. So the first thing to do is you want to make sure you're dressing the part. And what we mean by that is we're going to be providing you with either an NCAP shirt or a hat that has our logo on it. And Laura is showing you all what that looks like. That's the shirt. And then we have a nice embroidered beanie that has our logo on it as well. The hope is that you guys could select one of the two and be wearing that when you go out to talk to people. We'll also provide you with a name tag. And then if you could, I know people are still wearing masks. So just to be, pleasant to people and be considerate, we ask that you bring a mask just with you and wear it if, the person may be wearing one, just to, be considerate when you're going out to talk to people. So next, you want to think about a good time to go and talk with people. So best not to canvass your actual street. You might want to go deeper into your neighborhood. So you can talk with people that you don't know. Usually if it's right on your street, like those will be people that you generally talk to or have had some sort of conversation with. So those aren't the folks that we're trying to reach. We're trying to reach people that are a little farther out. And you want to go during the week, work week. Most people are at home usually between 5 and 9 p.m. I wouldn't suggest going like early in the morning, mainly because people are kind of rushing around and they may not try to engage with you. They'll try to get out of it, or maybe they won't answer the door. So just keeping in mind and being mindful of those things. It's okay. Like I said, if you don't get people to actually come to the door, like that's okay. We'll work on how to figure that out. So next slide, Laura. So do you knock or do you ring the doorbell? So that's a question that I've even asked myself sometimes. So what we suggest, if you're going to do one or the other, just like knock like 4 or 5 times, like firm knock, and listen for somebody inside the house. If you hear something going on, maybe wait like another 15 or 20 seconds before ringing a doorbell. You don't want to get people angry. So, don't be like railing on the door or anything like that. But, just be considerate about people's personal space, and know that if, there's no response after ringing the doorbell, wait another 15, 20 seconds, and then you can just go ahead and go. That's okay. So we created a script, which I sent as a PDF, but we could also share with you guys, because we're going to be using this script tonight while we're in our breakout rooms to kind of give yourself some time to practice. So basically, we would like you to use the script as it's written. Try not to go too far out of the script. I want you to have autonomy too. So if it is something related and it's not there, like you could say that, but generally just try to use what's there. And please don't try to read, try to be as natural as you can. It's good to keep it with you as like a point of like, oh, where do I go next? And you can kind of look quickly, but I think that, people are going to engage with you better if you're not like holding the paper right in front of you, right? So just try to keep that in mind. And I think generally like 15 minutes for conversation max is probably good. I don't think you need to go any more than that. Unless the person's really engaged, then please do. But for your time sake and, to be able to get through the outreach, you can just keep it minimal. And then try to find areas of common ground and offer them support. Don't try to, withhold judgment about if they're using pesticides. Like, that's okay. We're not here to be, somebody going around slapping people's hands. Like, we just want them to reduce. If they can, actually stop using altogether, that's really awesome. But I know that people are not all at the same spot. So, just really trying to, empathize and listen to the person. And then, like I said, offering them alternatives as Chris was talking about, really concrete examples. And then, we'll have resources that you guys can point to as well, that we'll be giving them packets as well that they can hold on to. So we also thought about some other spaces that if you guys are having trouble, we're going to be checking in with you all about mid-month of your outreach to see how it's going. And if it's not going so well door to door, there's obviously other ways to engage your community. So these are a list of things. I'm sure there are others that I didn't think about, but I talked to another partner of mine that did a similar project, and she was like, I had a lot of success. Sometimes it's hard to get people to the door, and we all realize that. So, going to a library and setting up a table, or if you're at the farmer's market, I don't know how many farmer's markets are still going on in Washington now, but, that's another option. Or if you go to like a community center, that's a great place to meet people that maybe you don't talk to all the time, or, talk to somebody at church that you may not have, engaged with before, or at a community event. And you can always talk with your friends. Like if you know people that are maybe using pesticides and you want to, just provide them with some support, that's always welcome. So just, try to be strategic, I guess, if the door-to-door is not working out for you. We can make it happen though. So these are some other ideas. So this will be the fun part, and you guys, neither Laura or myself are actors. So we're gonna go ahead and do just a small demonstration of the script, and basically kind of just run through like a few of the scenarios there, just so you guys kind of have an idea. And then we're gonna break out into our breakout groups. All right, knock, knock.
Hi.
Knock, knock. Hi. My name's Sherilyn. I live in the neighborhood. I noticed your garden is really beautiful, and your yard as well.
Thank you.
I'm not trying to sell anything to you, but I don't work for a campaign for like an election or anything. I just wondered, do you have a few minutes to chat with me about what you're doing here? Because it's really great.
Yeah, maybe. I'm really kind of busy. My kid's going to be home from school soon, but I guess I could talk for a minute.
Great. I totally understand. I'm a volunteer water steward with the Northwest Center for Alternatives to Pesticides. It's a small nonprofit based out of Eugene. We're working on a campaign that reduces chemical pesticide use into the Puget Sound, and this is through community engagement and education around safer yard care practices. I would love to be able to know, do you have, like, what weeds or pests are most difficult in your yard? What do you have the most problem with?
Yeah, in our lawn, we have a lot of dandelions and also flatweed, which I only learned recently. I thought it was all dandelions, but I guess flatweed is worse. So been trying to get those out of our grass.
And what are you doing to currently manage it?
We use Roundup to try to spray the weeds when we need to, when it gets out of control. Yeah.
Okay. How often are you using Roundup? Just curious.
We probably spray with Roundup like a few times a year.
Okay. Well, I actually have some great resources on some alternatives that you might be interested in trying. It seems like, at least from, what I could tell, you love your yard and your garden. And I would love to be able to support you with, just at least letting you know what is out there in terms of, maybe if you would like to eventually use something different. I don't know. It's up to you. But I do have this resource that shows basically there's a vinegar weed killer card that I have. If you use 20 to 30% horticultural vinegar, that's actually a really great option. There are also many products out there that are organically listed that would be, really great as an option to use if you wanted to, reduce even further your use of Roundup.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard about Roundup in the news, but I'm never really sure what's in it. So honestly, I don't really know, like, is it bad for my yard or the environment? I was never really sure.
Yes, glyphosate actually it has been in the news, you're correct. We've been seeing a lot more chronic illnesses coming from use of everyday use for multiple years, long periods of time. We're also seeing some algae blooms coming from that in some of our watersheds. That's one that commonly comes up in drinking water. So yeah, there are some concerns with Roundup. But yeah, like I said, I'm here to support you. And I would love to be able to either, get you signed up for our occasional emails that would actually give you some more pest tips and maybe some alternatives to Roundup. Could I sign you up for that?
Yeah, I can provide my email address. Yeah, and the resources that you mentioned about some of those different strategies, that sounds helpful.
Great. That's awesome. I'll go ahead and get you signed up. And I thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I know that you have, you're trying to get out of here to go pick up your child. So I really appreciate the conversation. And I will be in contact with you. And please, if you have any questions, you can reach out. I can give you my email address. Also, go to pesticide.org for more information as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
But I think you guys kind of get the idea. And please, by all means, using any of these questions, you can decide, what route you want to take. It's kind of like choose your own adventure. I don't know if you guys probably remember those books from back in the day. That's kind of what I think about when I'm thinking about scripts. So just, try to make it something that sounds normal and natural, and, try to maybe pick out a few points that you learned today that you can bring up. Like a good one, obviously, is Roundup, because I think that is something that people generally can go anywhere and buy without any problem. And, they are changing or have changed the chemistry. I don't know what that looks like now. But if they're using an older version of Roundup, the issues are still the same as what I was bringing up. So just really bringing it home, like we live on the Puget Sound, it's a really important water body. We have all these streams and like things connected to it that all are inputs to the Puget Sound. So just really thinking about, where do these chemicals go, and like trying to like help these people connect the dots, right? And, however we decide to do that. And you have it all kind of laid out on the script on the bottom. Laura actually pulled up some additional facts that you can use. So, if you want to shock them, initially saying that, there's 80 million pounds of pesticides used in people's yards per year, right, in the US. Or, talking about drinking water, I think is really a very important thing to people because we all need water to live. Or if they're a fisherman or something, maybe talking about salmon and how, these pesticides affect, their ability to, keep themselves from being predated and basically finding food, and their food sources are also being impacted. So there are multiple ways to get to the same thing. And you could also talk about the human health aspect, right? Because we're talking about glyphosate. So, just giving you guys some ideas. So now we're going to go ahead and put you guys into breakout rooms. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to take the scripts that were provided to you guys, and we're going to spend time practicing these with others in the breakout. So yeah, I guess now, this is just a time to share what you guys talk to one another about. How did it go? What any final questions do you have? I'm sure you have a lot, and that's okay. Feel free. What kind of support would you like from us to help you guys in this effort? And then we'll be mailing you outreach packets in a few days after the training, and that will give you all the materials that we said that we would be supplying you with. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it open for questions. Feel free to ask whatever you'd like.
I was just gonna say, or just gonna ask in the packet that's gonna get sent out, there'll be flyers that we can pass out.
Yep.
Okay, great. And then also, I had a question regarding the vinegar. What is it called? Because we thought it's like vinegar that you can just, that you just have in your kitchen, but it's like a higher strength vinegar is.
Yeah, so anything that's 20% or above, usually the household stuff is 10%, I believe. So yeah, if it's anything.
Mm-hmm. Where do you buy it? Can you get it at Home Depot, or is it a specialty store? Or?
You should be able to get it at Home Depot, but you can also get it online. If you did a Google search, you should be able to find it pretty easily online as well.
Okay, so anything 20% or higher.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, so we were in the same breakout room, and I think that the door-to-door thing, I might be able to do it, but I'm just thinking that maybe in my case, it might be better to go to the school board and try to get them to stop using Roundup. And then use the publicity from that to talk to people about their yards and say, hey, the school district was using this, and hopefully we get them to stop. And then, so it's a problem, large scale problem, not just with the school district, but now let's look at everyone's yards too and see if we can stop that and make things a little bit healthier.
Yeah, that's great. That's a really great idea, Chris. And I was saying to you, I think generally the idea behind this whole project is that, I'm trying to support you guys, but this is your community. So, for you to take kind of the reins on this, and, I'll be checking in, obviously after this is all over, I'll be like, hey, is this still going? But I think the idea is, behind the whole thing is to get people to just continue to do this. So whether you talk to your friends and then they talk to some people, you know what I mean? It's kind of just keeps going. And I think that generally that would be beautiful if I check in with you guys in 6 months and you're like, it's still going. This is really great, right? And now we got the school district to quit using, and we did this, we did that. So generally, yeah, this is your project. I just want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. It's great that you guys are so enthusiastic about this topic. It's like I was saying to folks earlier, either there are people that really know about it or people that really don't know much about it. And, I think that, with our situation with the climate changing and the things that I mentioned, with warming waters, and, people care about water generally. And it being polluted and, all the things, right? So just, it's really important to maintain, these beautiful spaces for future generations and being, I like the term water steward. That's why I use that. Just that's what comes to mind to me, as a ecologist and like really taking care of that ecosystem, the entire ecosystem, and yourself. So yeah, my email address is here on the slide, as well as our NCAP website. There are lots of tools and different information. There's articles, blog articles, all of the above on our website. So it's actually pretty helpful. But I will be in contact with you guys. Make sure that you fill out the survey so that I know where to send your packet to. And yes, like I said, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'm happy to hear from you and help you out. So.
Bye, everyone.
Everyone.
Bye. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good night. Bye.